Good evening. Welcome to NDTV Profit. This is The Big Question. I'm Vikram Oza. And let me start with something most of us have experienced in recent times. You walk into a mall. The lights are on, the escalators are running, but the shops, they are shut. The food court is empty and the echoes are getting louder than the footfalls. You know, across India, this is not an exception anymore. It is a pattern that we are seeing. India today has 74 so-called ghost malls, and this across 32 Indian cities. They're actually sitting on 15.5 million of square feet of underutilized space. And that's not just empty retail that we're talking about. That is actually locked capital. It is also lost jobs and stalled urban potential, which is the irony. At the same time, we're talking about the grade A malls in some of our urban centers, and they are thriving. Vacancies there are below 6%. Footfalls are quite strong. Brands are expanding in these malls. In fact, consumers are clearly spending. They are spending, but selectively. So what has gone wrong over here? Is it online shopping, which is hollowing out physical retail? Is it poor design? Is it weak management of these malls? Is it overbuilding in cities that could not absorb the supply of these malls? Or is it simply that the mall model itself has changed drastically? From shopping destinations now to experience hubs, now that has become the ask. Are they able to deliver? In fact, a new Knight Frank report is saying that if even 15 of these ghost malls are fixed, they could unlock more than 350 crores in annual rental value. So that's the big opportunity, especially in tier 2 cities. But that's not our question. It's more something that is primary. Why did these malls become ghost malls is the primary question. Has online shopping killed these malls, or have bad malls killed themselves? And that is the debate. So let me bring in our panelists to take this on. And for that, we have Gulam joining us. He is Senior Executive Director of Knight Frank India. Also, Abhay Gupta will join us shortly. He is, of course, Chairman at Luxury Connect and the Indian Luxury Strategist. And perhaps in a moment, we'll have Nirzar Jain joining us, President of Leasing at Nexus Select Trust. But let me take this across to Gulam first, since he's with us right now. And of course, let me check in with you, Gulam. Currently, in the kind of scenario that we have with our malls, you have the A-list malls doing well in some of the urban centers, but there are the growing number of ghost malls. Is it online shopping that is really killing them? Why haven't they kept pace with what the other malls in some of our urban centers have been able to do?
Vikram, thank you so much for focusing on this work that we have done and giving me an opportunity to be here on this platform. It's always a pleasure to connect with NDTV. This report that we have in front of you is obviously, as you have captured earlier in your submission, is talking about this phenomenon of ghost malls where, you know, the retailing activity per se has almost died down. Your question, the first question that you asked me is to go through what are the key reasons behind it, and whether e-commerce or quick commerce is one of them. Well, possibly, but this is not just about it, because the decay in these malls and the way these malls have been gradually but definitely moving towards kind of complete shutdown has been a long process. For last almost about 7-8 odd years, we have been watching many of these malls giving way. That is even before, say, a quick commerce had emerged. And mind you, the consumption of our retail of our people has been shooting up big enough to accommodate both physical as well as the digital side of retailing. So that definitely is not the key reason for the decay of these malls. There are lots of other reasons. The topmost of them, as you said, just a fleeting remark you made, the experiential side of retailing is what is missing in many of these places. And when we talk about the experiential side of it, we are talking again multiple factors. First of all, connectivity of this particular any center that you're talking about from the primary and secondary catchment areas. Secondly, the most key reason is actually proper focus on mall management which means, placing your merchandise in proper, getting them together in a proper way, ensuring that a swift and smooth functioning of retailers as well as the buyers, and parking spaces. So there are a lot of these reasons why things haven't really gone well for many of them. Brandings, right brands, proper merchandising, availability of infrastructure like parking and so on and so forth. A lot of these reasons have contributed over and above just expansion of e-commerce and quick commerce into the retailing part of it. So it's a mix of all. And since we're talking about 75 different centers which have fallen prey to the pandemic, the reasons for each of these malls could be different, but the reality is most of them are dead.
Mr. Gupta, taking away from what we're hearing from Gulam Zia over here, the missing link for a big part seems to be that experiential gap that we are seeing in some of our malls. How much of that is actually in play over here when we are assessing why we have a growing number of ghost malls? Compared to what we are seeing in the past, the number of ghost malls is going up. Unlocked potential is one part of it. But what is it about the mall culture that is dying? How much of that do we owe to the e-commerce boom that we've seen? Because the ease of shopping through that seems to, take away from what malls have been able to do in the past.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And if I take on forward from what my panelists just told you about the malls, a quick historical snapshot of the mall culture in India. I think the first generation malls came up around in the mid-90s. I think the first one was Crossroads in Mumbai, and the first one in Delhi was the Ansal Plaza. Now, if you typically look at those malls, they were designed on a sale model and not a lease model. That sale model was where the real estate builder treated it like a real estate asset, sold it and got out, and did not really care about how the customers come in or how the mall is managed, etc. I would say there was no concept of zoning. Of course, the zoning concept came in, and then we have success stories like the Select City Walk, and now, of course, the Ambience Mall, etc. in Delhi. The reason why customers are moving away from some of the malls, and I would not say all the malls, is not primarily e-commerce or primarily shopping. I think the younger customer, the Gen Z, wants to go out and hang out in the malls. He wants to have a good time. He wants to touch and feel the product. But what really probably is lacking is perhaps as some of the inconveniences mentioned by the earlier speaker in terms of parking, in terms of congestion, in terms of maybe zoning, in terms of entertainment, in terms of overall look and feel of the mall. While there is upgradation being done by malls which are, let's say, up and about, but generally speaking, most of the malls, especially in the smaller cities, are being unkempt, or they have not corrected the models when it comes to zoning and the brands on offer. Eventually, the modern day mall is becoming a copycutter model. Each mall is offering the same brands. Every few kilometers, you have a mall coming up. I mean, I belong to Gurgaon, and every few kilometers, we have a mall opening which has the same brands. The look and feel of the mall is extremely good because you have the product, but you don't have the service, you don't have the culture. So a good mall, a good retail environment requires a couple of things. A, the product, B, the people, C, the process, and D, the culture. So if you have the people, process, culture missing and just the product there, it'll soon fall apart. And I think that's what is really happening.
So you're saying the needs of the buyer has changed. The ones who went to the mall, when those malls actually came up, now what they're looking for by way of an experience inside the mall, that has changed drastically. The malls that haven't been able to keep pace, those have fallen off the radar. But creating that differentiator is an important piece. You can't have cookie cutter malls, is something else you're pointing out. Nirzar, Jain, do you agree with that? From a leasing standpoint, do brands now treat malls as secondary to online channels, you think? And does that change how much space they're willing to commit to within malls?
Vikram, thank you for having me on the panel. To answer this, most of our malls, we got into this business in 2016. Nexus is a Blackstone-backed platform. And, some of my panelists, Gulam and Abhay, did address this. It's about constantly looking at creating a new customer experience, which brands work, which don't work. At Nexus, we've maintained a portfolio occupancy of 97% plus for last 10 plus quarters, right? And it's about curating the experience, sorting out those issues. Most of the dead malls being talked about here are actually strata sold, sometimes inefficient management. I think our portfolio, we kind of thrive of taking grade A malls, doing exactly what some of the panelists have said, adding better brands, creating that churn, creating upside for us and creating a new experience for customers. Like we have now 3,400 odd stores, out of which 1,000 unique brands, and we've expanded that list to 1,098 in the last 4-5 years. So also launching international brands, I think Abhay mentioned about how Select City, which is now part of the Nexus portfolio, we've added 10 international brands, their first entry into the country. So it's about kind of curating the space again and again. And to the other point on e-commerce, for example, we've seen one of the first Nykaa stores, when they wanted to do offline expansion, they were doing well, opened at the Nexus portfolio.
Yes.
Today they are at most of our malls. Similar trend we are seeing with a lot of D2C brands, and they, after reaching a particular threshold point, want to be in malls because that creates better presence and brings them more repeat customers.
Yes.
So you kind of create that energy. Yes, what customers want changes. You got to be cognizant of that and keep working on that.
Yes. So that's an important point that you say. There are a certain number of online malls as well. They have gone offline, Gulam. Is that trend not showing in some of these ghost malls and the kind of pickup for the real estate that they provide when they are looking at expansion into the offline world, like the Nykaas of the world? How are these malls not figuring in their plan?
Well, as we said earlier, that these malls have actually failed for various reasons, and brand is one of them. What you're focusing, or what Nirzar brought about, is actually one of the factors, that how the reverse activity is happening. What you're trying to focus all this while was how e-commerce and quick commerce is taking consumers or retailers away from malls. He's trying to draw your attention towards the fact that many of the brands which started on e-commerce have come back to physical platform. And there's a key difference which Nirzar is bringing about, which is extremely important to understand. The reason of that, now, why these malls, these brands are not looking at these malls, obviously, because if there is no footfall here, the key factors which the other panelists also spoke about is people. So if people are missing, then why would any brand come here? And again, a lot of these things that other panelists are talking about are all fitting in place and telling you one thing very clearly, that we can't blame it on e-commerce, quick commerce for the state of these malls. The reasons are way beyond just e-commerce and quick commerce, because e-commerce and quick commerce is actually going hand in glove with physical retailing also.
No, the reason why I'm asking, Gulam, just to take one step back, the reason I'm asking is because a lot of times we hear that there isn't enough space that our retail industry has to be able to showcase their wares. Isn't that true right now? And if that were true, then these malls, if we were to revive them, if at all they haven't been working for various reasons that you've already pointed out, then aren't these the ideal space?
What we spoke about earlier, Vikram, that most of these, the 74 that we have enlisted here, are places which are actually drawing lots of disadvantage. Like, for example, if you would have created a mall in boondocks, which is not connected with the masses, there are no proper connect for people to travel to these places, the mall is already ticked off. So even if you have all the kind of spaces, you may not find proper retailers to come to these places. So the limited point here is, there are a lot of things have gone wrong with those malls, and a retailer itself is just one of them. So whether it is proper management, the infrastructure we spoke about, if any or most of them are missing, that's a reason why these malls haven't been able to thrive or even survive. So today, most of these malls require some other alternative, maybe a change of user, etc. And if at all possible, I'm saying that possibly change the management. There are today, as we heard earlier as well, that earlier the old malls actually had a problem of lack of management, typical, make and pass it on to various users and run away. That's a model which actually makes these malls absolutely impossible to revive. So if there are 25 owners of a certain mall, then people like Nexus would not be keen to even touch them because they don't want to get into a place where they'll not be able to run it independently. So mall is not just about product, it's more about services, which all of us are talking about. And if those services are missing, there's no chance these malls will ever survive. In spite of a shortage of good space in the country, you may still not have people coming to these places.
But it still takes me back, Mr. Gupta, if I can ask you, because of the e-commerce convenience, the kind of discounts, the kind of choices that a person gets, will a mall be actually effectively be able to do that? And now that we have a sectoral play, when it's the kind of items that are available and people like to shop for, so perhaps a demarcation is coming through in what you would go to a mall for and what you do e-commerce transactions with. Is that happening right now? And is that also propelling the kind of change or the shift in consumer behavior?
So I mean, again, if I go speak historically, when e-commerce came on the horizon, there was a phenomena called web rooming, where people were going to the malls, looking at the product, checking the size, and going and buying online. Now it is reverse. It's the showrooming. People are actually looking at things on e-commerce, coming to the store physically, trying it out, and then buying it. So while e-commerce has actually constructed a lot of convenience with respect to traffic and maybe parking spaces and other such difficulties, it also remains a fact that people do want to get out of the house. Post-COVID, people are wanting to step out. I mean, look at the success of the concerts and the music festivals, and look at the rush for movies, etc. That despite the Netflixes of the world, we do manage to make some money with the movie halls as well. So I believe that as a human psychology, people are looking to step out and people are looking to have fun in a controlled environment. And that's what the mall provides, that it is air conditioned, it is relatively supposed to be neat and clean, whether it is not, it depends on the management. But generally speaking, that's what the customer expects, that I get a clean environment, I get great service, and I get great parking, I don't have to wait in queue, etc., etc. So if those challenges are removed, I think e-commerce, and as the panelist said, that omni-channel has now become, it's here to stay. People who were online first are coming offline now.
Right.
And people who were offline first are going online now. So I don't think the future is really with respect to malls or no malls. The challenge, as you're pointing out, is to revive the dead malls. To revive the dead malls, I think you need to have a case-to-case study, and not everyone can be revived. Some of them can surely be revived through better management, through better zoning, through better practices, or maybe premiumization of the whole space. So there are examples of malls which went along with the consumer as the GDP grew, disposable income grew, the quality of brands, reshuffling of the brands. Select City Walk is a great example, how they reshuffled the brands as the customers moved in and customers asked for a premium service. I mean, they have the highest footfall during festival period. I mean, you're coming December, I think they'll have very high footfall, something like 20, 30,000 people a day, yet they are able to manage the crowds.
Right.
Now, people like us would avoid going to a crowded mall. Can we do a crowd management system where people don't feel claustrophobic? So there are many challenges which need to be looked at with respect to reviving the malls.
So while we're talking about revival of these malls, I want to understand from you, Nirzar, if you think there is going to be this fundamental difference, because there is some amount of catching up to do when you talk about the tier 1 trends when it comes to malls and the tier 2, tier 3 trends when malls were built in a certain kind of way. But now we're trying to emulate what happens in our metros. So if that is the successful model, then how much of a laggard effect are you seeing in some of our tier 2 and tier 3 malls, which is why we are seeing so many more ghost malls right now?
So many layers to your question, Vikram. And touching upon that, Nexus started with a portfolio of 2 malls. We are now 19 malls in the REIT and going strong, and we are going to be adding. We see strong demand actually in tier 2 and 3 as well as an opportunity to penetrate deeper into the metros. Some part is curation. We are a modern marketplace and we need to continue to cater to that. I think we largely cater to middle belly India, and I think that belly is growing for India as a whole because there's a huge emerging middle class with aspirations. Part of that is the urban infrastructure outside is so bad. Gulam and Mr. Gupta was touching upon it earlier. you have curated environments, you have events, you're managing the crowd well, and keep changing the brand, it kind of creates a space. Today, there are about 110 grade A malls. 50% of them are institutionally owned, and all of them are actually enjoying very high occupancy and wanting to grow. Just like a different point in terms of demand supply, today retail demands, when we speak to various portfolio retailers, is about 10 to 12 million square feet. The supply coming in the next 3 to 4 years is just 5 to 6 million square feet, right? This is the next 3 to 4 years. And this includes metros, tier 2 state capitals. So there's, I think grade A malls are going to continue to see huge demand, higher occupancy as all the operators continue, including Nexus, continues to create that differentiation with better brands, what is relevant.
Yes.
So I think that journey will continue, and I think.
But the kind of transactions that are struck, especially now brands who have online presence, Gulam, when they are negotiating their rent with these malls, how much of their online sales are going to determine how much they're willing to pay for one and where they are planning to locate if they are planning to take part of their business offline?
Well, here there are two factors. One is, of course, presence and visibility, and the other is actual trade. And right now what we're talking about is actually a mix of the two, and most of these online brands, when you're referring to looking out for physical space, the biggest factor for them would be visibility. But that said, ultimately trade would matter. Ability to make money is going to be driving the whole decision. And then against that, what is the ability to pay the rentals? That is something which will be the key factor. So while, initially when we spoke about Nykaas and, many of the other, I think Lenskart, etc., when they came into this domain, there were some concerns. Will they be able to pay the kind of rents that they're focusing on? But they survived and they did better. So the question here will be ultimately addressed mall to mall, their ability to manage within those rentals that they're paying. And of course, here, when we have professional managers like Nirzar and a lot of the other such companies who know the business, are able to actually look at the forecasts of their revenues in future. How will they do? Because ultimately, it depends a lot. I recall my discussion with Nirzar and his team earlier. Ability to churn is the key here. You need to really focus on that. You have brands coming in. You have to actually get rid of a few brands if they're not doing well and replace them with some other brands. So this is an ongoing process.
Yes.
And the successful mall managers are those who understand how good their retailers are doing in their malls. Ability to keep track of their revenues and ability to pay rentals is something which is driving this entire business, and which many of them have understood and working well on it.
So here is the question about demand right now, Gulam, because at this time, your report is pegging 357 crore rupees of rental potential in some of these revivable malls. But I'm just asking, what is the potential over here for these brands right now? Some of them may not be able to afford the kind of rent which grade A malls are offering spaces at. Where do they go? And in case these malls are likely targets for them, then does the business model need to change for them to be able to get that kind of access, that kind of location, that kind of space for interaction with consumers?
Well, this will again be case-to-case basis. We have identified 15 of those 75 or 60 which we believed are not doing well. And these 15 are the cases where you don't have, say, strata sale kind of a situation, where infrastructure, physical infrastructure around the mall is not bad. So these are more internal factors which are, plaguing these places. And once that is established, then you have to look at what kind of revenues needed to actually pump in, what kind of cost needed to bring it back to life. And against that, do you have, debtors, etc. After you have taken care of all of them, then you have to look at what kind of rental would you start with. And then whether those retailers, do they have deep pockets to sustain for a couple of months till this place comes back to life and becomes a brand in itself. So that duration will have to be seen. Ability to sustain in that duration is going to be the key for success of these malls. But that's it. Again, as I said, this is not, again, one size fitting all kind of an approach. We will have to go mall to mall and look at what are the right brands to come together to make this mall succeed again.
So, Mr. Gupta, from a consumer perspective, yes, we understood that some of these malls need to shuffle their brands around. They need to kind of see how the retailers within the mall are doing. But from a consumer perspective, what is the kind of experience that they're looking for in malls right now? How is that changing demographically and location-wise? Where is the big shift that we need to kind of concentrate on and look for the future for these malls that India is going to have?
Well, so I would probably say that the younger generation is looking at fun and entertainment at every angle. So retailtainment is really coming of age today. So the young Gen Z, I mean, while there are very good food courts available and there's a variety of food available, you might argue the same case that despite cloud kitchens, the food courts are always full. So we can say the same, that despite e-commerce, why aren't the malls full? So it's a question of whether the malls are servicing the customer properly. Have they understood the consumer behavior correctly? So I would say a whole lot of fun, whole lot of activities, whole lot of entertainment, and whole lot of something new always to come out of the families, something which the malls deeply need to consider. Another thing which could be a thought is probably if they can be category specific malls. So overseas, we do have malls which are only catering to, say, automobiles, or only to furniture, only to technology, etc., etc. I mean, if you come to Gurgaon, then Sector 29, we have 5 multi-brand showrooms offering home appliances, from a Vijaya Sales to a Reliance Retail. So why can't we have malls which are category specific? That probably could be a thought process that can be planted in the minds of those, the people who are trying to renovate the malls. So I believe that all in all, put together, getting category specific, being entertainment oriented, and understanding the consumer, those are 3 things which probably need to be done to revive these malls.
So it clearly seems that the answer to the question we've raised on the big question tonight, that online shopping hasn't quite killed the malls, it does expose every weakness in the mall model right now. In a digital-first world, only those malls that offer that kind of experience that we're talking about here, the kind of curation of brands, the sense of community, all of those factors are going to determine whether they survive and thrive. The rest is, of course, they will either need reinvention or they could risk becoming obsolete, which is why we are seeing a trend of ghost malls. But India's retail story is clearly not so much more about space, but about better space. And that's something that brands are looking for. My thanks to Gulam, Abhay Gupta, Nirzar, Jain. Thank you very much for your insights, and we'll keep tracking the retail story very closely. Thanks for joining us on The Big Question. And viewers, indeed, as far as India's retail promise is concerned, as we've seen in our online sales and we are seeing in our malls, especially the grade A ones, notwithstanding what the ghost malls are doing, is a very interesting space, and we'll keep tracking it. But for the moment, from me, Vikram Oza, and the entire team on The Big Question, thank you and good evening.